Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, May 11th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. He calls it a historic plan to solve a big problem. And today, Governor Newsom came to San Diego to launch a $12 billion proposal to tackle the state's homeless crisis. KPBS reporter Melissa May with what makes this new costly idea different.
The governor's stop at the Kearney Vista Apartments today was to highlight his commitment to fighting the homeless crisis.
This is not just doubling down on strategies that we know work. This is an order of magnitude investment into transforming the homeless crisis in the state of California.
The former Residence Inn Kearney Mesa is part of Project Home Key, a program that turns hotels, motels, and apartments into homes for people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. Resident Lindsay Prescott was homeless, pregnant, and an addict. She was given the opportunity to move into the Kearney Vista Apartments.
And because the Housing Commission allowed for me to let us live here, I got my daughter back. I'm 18 months sober. She'll be 19 months old, 22nd of this month. And I am beyond grateful.
San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria fully supports Project Home Key.
This is more than a home. It is the services that will keep people housed and ultimately break the cycle of homelessness, providing things like case management, mental health counseling, employment assistance.
People in San Diego County experiencing homelessness saw a sharp rise last year. The Regional Task Force on the Homeless found more than 38,000 people received some form of housing and services, the most ever. The county proposes $85 million to match the commitment to end homelessness by the state. Melissa May, KPBS News.
With the recall election of Governor Gavin Newsom all but certain to happen this fall, candidates who want his job are doing what they can to stand out. Rancho Santa Fe businessman John Cox is bringing a Kodiak bear to campaign stops, including one here in San Diego. As KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us, the candidate was greeted with protesters.
The theme of Republican John Cox's campaign is right there on his bus. And this is the beast in question, a Kodiak bear named Tag.
The reason the bear is here is to demonstrate that we're going to have to be a beast to tackle these special interests.
Cox says Governor Newsom is captive to special interests. He pointed to Newsom's dinner at the exclusive French Laundry restaurant last November with two lobbyists from the California Medical Association. Newsom later apologized. He said attending the dinner was a mistake. Cox ticked off a number of issues he says Newsom has failed to address.
But Cox had company for this news conference, animal activists from Lions and Tigers and Bears who only had one issue in mind.
It's time to stand up and be the animal's voice and stop using animals.
Bobby Brink founded and now runs Lions, Tigers, and Bears, an animal sanctuary in Alpine.
These animals are pulled as babies from their mama, and then they're used for nothing more than exactly this, to be trained and carted around from place to place in an enclosed trailer for nothing more than profit and exploitation.
I'm an animal lover. I believe in taking care of animals. God gave them to us to enjoy this paradise of an earth.
Cox says it's time to look forward and move beyond what he says is a failed governor. He says Newsom has mishandled a number of issues, including homelessness and the state's exposure to wildfires. But Brink says when it comes to the treatment of animals, Cox is the one living in the past.
This is the old days, and it's the new days. We don't need to use animals for this anymore. And the public doesn't know thousands of these animals are used like this and then dumped.
We're in the midst of a 30-day period where people who signed the recall petition can withdraw their signatures. If enough remain after the withdrawal period, the recall election will move forward, probably in November. 5 previous attempts to recall Newsom failed. John Carroll, KPBS News.
36% of California voters support recalling Governor Newsom. That's according to the latest poll from UC Berkeley Institute of Governmental Studies. Former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer and John Cox each have about 22% support for replacing Newsom, and reality star Caitlyn Jenner has only 6%. Governor Newsom has proposed another round of stimulus payments for undocumented workers in California. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us how previous payments have helped immigrant workers in San Diego and why many believe they're still not adequate.
North Park resident Luis had been out of work since being laid off from a restaurant last year at the beginning of the pandemic. He's undocumented, so we're protecting his full name. He was one of the 1,000 undocumented people who got an emergency $500 debit card from the state at the beginning of the pandemic. But since then, he hasn't received any further support from the government, even though he paid taxes in the United States for 6 years. Undocumented people don't qualify for unemployment insurance. It was tough for him to find work, even after businesses began to reopen.
Most of the places were closed, so it wasn't like jobs available, basically.
On Monday, Governor Gavin Newsom announced a new $500 round of stimulus payments for undocumented people, on top of a $600 payment approved by the legislature earlier this year. Luis said if he was to receive the total additional $1,100, he would save it, because he still doesn't have access to unemployment insurance.
This kind of money arrived. I want to be able to save it. Well, we want to be able to save it in case in the future something else happens, like we don't know what's going to happen. So rather to save the money and be prepared for next round if something happens.
This lack of security for undocumented workers won't be solved by these checks, says Lucas Zucker, with the Central Coast Alliance United for a Sustainable Economy. His group has been pushing for larger checks to the state's 2 million undocumented people, while the state runs a huge budget surplus.
A one-time $500 payment, it's important and it's needed, but it's not even enough to make 1 month's rent for folks who are really struggling with job loss and really nowhere to turn.
Luis has gone back to work in recent weeks at a different restaurant from his old one, often working more than 45 hours a week. He's watched as his old co-workers have been supported all year by unemployment insurance.
Nothing, it's like whole year, okay, whatever, but yeah, it made me feel angry, less.
He's hoping that California will use some of its record-breaking surplus to better compensate undocumented workers like himself. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
Today, San Diego Unified School District Superintendent Cindy Martin was confirmed as the country's next Deputy Education Secretary, and she will oversee the day-to-day operations in the U.S. Department of Education, serving under Secretary Miguel Cardona. A former elementary school teacher and principal, Martin had been San Diego Unified Superintendent since 2013. Tomorrow, Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine should be made available to kids as young as 12 in San Diego County. The CDC Advisory Committee is Immunization Practices is expected to recommend the shot for 12 to 15-year-olds by the early afternoon. Dr. John Bradley, the director of the Division of Infectious Disease at Rady Children's Hospital, says it's another step toward herd immunity.
We've got 165,000 kids in San Diego County between the ages of 12 and 15. And if we can immunize them all, then the proportion of people in the county who are immune and won't spread the virus increases substantially.
And while no children in our county have died from the virus, they can spread it without symptoms and put family members at risk of serious disease and hospitalization. Dr. Bradley says another benefit is that kids would be able to go out with their friends if they're all immunized. And a reminder, we are tracking the county's COVID-19 vaccinations online. If you want to set up an appointment for yourself or for an eligible family member, you can find a location quite easily by going to kpbs.org and just click on the vaccines link that you are going to find on our homepage. A treatment proven to reduce hospitalizations and deaths in those with COVID-19 is being offered in San Diego, but isn't being fully taken advantage of. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says officials are trying to get the word out.
Family Health Centers of San Diego is expanding access to a COVID-19 therapy that reduces the severity of the virus.
Early onset of symptoms is key. So really, as soon as they test positive, we'd like to get them in treated right away.
Pauline Lucatero is director of nursing at Family Health Centers. She says the monoclonal antibody treatment is simple and fast, requiring just one visit to deliver proteins that attack the virus.
It takes about 30 minutes to infuse, and we observe for about an hour just to ensure that there's no allergic reactions that the patients will be experiencing. And if they do, we're prepared for that.
Make a fist bump a couple times.
Since December, around 250 people have come in for the treatment between this facility in Chula Vista and another in Hillcrest.
1, 2, 3.
But Family Health Centers can do much more, and it's also being offered free for those who don't have insurance.
We've really just designed this to be as accessible to our patients and to others as much as possible. And the key is to get everybody treated. There shouldn't be any reason for any patients to get admitted to hospitals if we have this drug available for them.
That's it.
Encanto resident Olga Villanueva says the treatment was easy.
It was good. I didn't feel anything.
She says Family Health Centers reached out to her after recently testing positive.
I feel good, but I took it precisely to prevent a much worse disease.
The treatment is geared for those most at risk and can be used in kids as young as 12.
It went good. The process was easy.
14-year-old Leslie Hernandez tested positive after her mom, dad, and grandmother contracted the virus.
Might be a little cold. This is just saline.
So far, she's had mild symptoms, including a sore throat and some headaches, but says the treatment has really helped her mom.
She's okay now. She's been way much better since last week.
In addition to Family Health Centers, Palomar Health and San Isidro Health are also offering the treatment. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
The pandemic has taken a major toll on tourism, and a recent report says full recovery could be up to 4 years away. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer breaks down what this means for the workers in San Diego's largest economic sector.
Prior to the pandemic, San Diego's tourism industry was the second largest employer in the region and was responsible for about 200,000 jobs. Since COVID-19 arrived in early 2020, some 70,000 local tourism and hospitality workers lost their jobs, according to a Sandag report. That's roughly 37% of all job losses in the region. Among Hispanic workers who lost their jobs, half worked in the tourism sector, according to the report.
I was so busy working and I had a very good income, and then to nothing is just, it was very scary for me.
Orfa Ortiz is a single mother of 2 and a banquet server who worked for 7 different hospitality companies in San Diego. When the pandemic hit, all of her income streams were cut and she applied for unemployment. Now she says even that income is unreliable.
So it's very stressful. I'm going through a hard time, and it's just kind of like went down on steps. I can from March 7, all the year, losing my jobs, losing my apartment, losing now my unemployment, working little hours here and there, trying to look for a babysitter. It's very overwhelming.
Bridget Browning is the president of Unite Here Local 30, a labor union for hotel and hospitality workers.
Even if business comes back to 2019 levels, I don't believe employment will come back to 2019 levels ever. They're going to cut back on amenities that they feel like the guests don't care very much about, which means there'll be significantly less jobs.
While the COVID-19 vaccine rollout is allowing the economy to gradually reopen, a new tourism authority report for the region predicts tourism will not fully return to 2019 levels until 2024. Ortiz has started some work again and is trying to be optimistic.
I'm really hoping in my heart that next year we go back a little bit more to normal, and I can see myself working again, maybe not the 7 jobs, but working at least 5.
According to the Tourism Authority report, total visitation in the county is expected to grow 74% this year compared to 2020. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
One of the Padres' star players has tested positive for COVID-19. The Padres say Fernando Tatis Jr. tested positive during the team's road trip. They're currently in Denver. 2 teammates, Yerixen Profar and Jorge Mateo, are also out of the mix due to contact tracing. It might be a couple of weeks before they can actually return. The Padres say Tatis is feeling well and not experiencing any symptoms. Public health experts say free COVID-19 testing is key to monitoring the pandemic going forward. So why are some people still paying hundreds of dollars for tests? iNewsSource investigative reporter Jill Castellano has the story.
When Carmen Lucci was exposed to COVID-19 in October, his employer told him he needed a negative test or a 2-week quarantine. Lucci is a waiter who has been laid off 4 times during the pandemic. He couldn't afford another pay cut, so he spent almost $200 on a rapid test at a place called COVID Clinic.
And they're just taking advantage of people like me who have to show up to work to get their tips or whatever, and like paying out that $200.
A survey commissioned by iNewsSource found more than 20 testing providers in the county, including COVID Clinic, did not bill insurance in some or all cases. That means customers have to pay up front and try to get reimbursed by insurance later. Erin Foussey-Brown, a healthcare expert at Georgia State University, says those upfront costs could discourage people from seeking testing. That can make it harder for public health experts to monitor infection levels and isolate people with the virus.
In order to kind of stem the tide of a potential 4th wave from variants or just the remaining COVID that is still actively circulating in the community, we still need to do widespread testing.
The county runs many free testing sites, but the results could take days, and some residents turn to expensive providers for a faster turnaround time. The CEO of COVID Clinic said it has higher prices because of the many startup costs of beginning a new business. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource investigative reporter Jill Castellano.
And for more about COVID test prices, go to inewssource.org. iNewsSource is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. As more and more Americans get vaccinated, some are also getting frustrated with federal recommendations that could seem outdated. Isabel Rosales is in Washington with more.
Thank you.
As President Joe Biden meets virtually with a group of governors, some of the youngest Americans, 12 to 15-year-olds, got vaccinated against COVID-19.
I'm going to be able to go more places without being scared of getting COVID-19.
CDC data shows that as of Monday, nearly half of all Americans, 46%, received at least 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine.
If we continue to vaccinate people at the rate that we're doing, we will begin to return to the normality that all of us desire so much.
People are already starting to go out more and wear masks less. According to a new poll, 54% said they went to a restaurant in the last week. That's a pandemic high. And the number of people wearing masks whenever they leave the house is down to 58%, the lowest point since last June.
We know that masks make a big difference indoors. They don't outdoors.
The CDC says less than 10% of COVID-19 infections studied occurred outside. But a review from the New York Times found no documented COVID infection anywhere in the world from casual outdoor interactions, such as walking past someone on a street or eating at a nearby table.
The conflicting, confusing guidance from your agency has undermined public confidence.
Now, some lawmakers urge the CDC to rethink mask mandates and update other COVID guidance quickly.
You gotta realize, you gotta be more real time.
In Washington, Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
The statewide drought is getting worse. Governor Newsom has now expanded a drought emergency to include 39 additional counties in the central and northern regions of the state. The initial emergency was due to a lack of rainfall and an unanticipated reduction in water flowing to major reservoirs. Reports say about 98% of the state is now experiencing drought conditions, with nearly 75% seeing extreme conditions. The governor is calling on Californians to do their part to save water.
We're going to rinse and repeat with the foggy and cloudy mornings over the next couple of days, but the good news is that plenty of bright and sunny afternoons come along with it. But we will be feeling a big time cool down for some of you as we head into this weekend. Temperatures for tonight dropping off into the low 60s, so not a bad night. Again, increasing cloud cover and some fog as you're waking up early on your Wednesday morning. Oceanside dropping off into the upper 50s for tonight. Low 60s down at Chula Vista. In the higher terrain, we're still in the upper 50s. 50s and low 60s out there as well. And again, you can see all the cloud cover here building in and with the fog during the overnight period. So as you're waking up, it's probably not going to look so great out there for some of the coastal regions, but it will improve as we head into the afternoon. Wednesday looking like a nice and warm day all across the Golden State. It is going to be bright, sunny. Nice day for us for the middle of the work week. It gets even hotter out there as we head into your Thursday. So highs on your Wednesday getting up into the mid 70s in Escondido, low 80s towards Ramona, Borrego Springs, warming up to 99 degrees for the middle of your work week. And then we get this little ridge of high pressure, this little bump in the jet stream. And that means that it's going to heat up even more for some of you by the time we get into Thursday. Near the coast, temperatures are going to be dropping off from the low 70s down into the mid to upper 60s this weekend as we get this little piece of energy that slides southward, bringing a little bit of a cool down for the weekend. Further inland, you'll notice a little bit of a more dramatic change from the mid to upper 70s Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, low 70s by Saturday, upper 60s by Sunday. In the mountains, much of the same, about a 10-degree drop by between about Wednesday and Thursday too by the time we get to Sunday. And the heat is on in the desert. Check it out. 100 degrees for your high on Thursday, but dropping off quickly as we head into the weekend. By Sunday, we could be only in the 80s for those daytime highs. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
Today, the Port of San Diego considered a plan that aims to reduce the amount of pollution portside businesses put in the air. But as KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson explains, the draft policy isn't getting a warm reception from community advocates.
Sylvia Calzada says it was scary when her doctor first diagnosed her asthma 7 years ago.
When your airways shut down and then you can't breathe, so that's very difficult, and you get a lot of anxiety.
Calzada has lived in National City for more than 2 decades, and her family roots there run deep.
My great-grandmother lived here. My grandmother currently lives here.
Calzada remembers living by paint shops and seeing trucks rumbling through her neighborhood.
In various of our areas where we lived at, there was a lot of trucks passing by, and we could smell that diesel, popping out, and that affects our bodies. And then just here in Paradise Creek, there were other trucks passing by, and that smoke is out there.
And the trucks are easy to find even today. They roll in and out of the port's marine facility just about a half mile or so from Calzada's Paradise Creek home. Calzada works with other community members to push the port to consider the impact on their neighbors. And back in February, the port ordered staff to develop something called Maritime Clean Air Strategy. Port Commission Chair Michael Zuquette says he wanted more than just a spirited discussion in a boardroom.
What's the plan? How are we going to do this? How are we going to transition in a way that maintains all this economic activity, maintains the good, but limits, or in some cases eliminates, the negative impacts on the surrounding communities with respect to clean air?
Commissioners directed staff to put those ideas into writing. They asked for a policy that had specific measurable goals with clean air targets and the mechanisms to enforce compliance. Port Vice President Jason Giffen says the challenge lies in balancing 2 objectives.
Focus effort, which is primarily the next generation of how we're going to address clean air and being a good neighbor, while at the same time driving forward the economy of the port business at the Port of San Diego. It is essentially going to be a policy document that will set the foundation in writing in terms of what will be the port's initiatives and strategies moving forward.
But the resulting draft document got a cool reception from community advocates. The Environmental Health Coalition's Danny Serrano says the staff recommendation falls short of what the port commissioners ask for publicly. He says there's a lot of good language about environmental justice and clean air in the document, but
when you get into the details of the MCAS goals and objectives, the meats of the document, it is clear that it is really inadequate and will not sufficiently alter or change the business as usual environment at the port.
Serrano says the port plan needs to be specific about goals, timelines, and how the port will get there. And his organization is pushing for aggressive goals. Serrano says the port needs to electrify its on-terminal operations and expand that off-terminal.
develop a clean trucks program by the end of this year, 2021, with a clear and phased plan and strategies to transition 30% zero emission vehicles by 2023, and again, 100% by 2030.
And the port seems receptive. Commissioner Michael Zucchet says the public concerns have been heard, and the port is planning another round of public input.
I think this is an example of a public agency not just putting a document out for comment by the public and then doing what they want anyway. If this is an example of an agency putting a document out, we got a lot of public comment. We're going to be responsive to that comment.
The port is expected to compile the public comments and come back to the commissioners for approval sometime this summer. Zucchet says a working plan represents a huge change in port operations moving forward.
Truck traffic is essential for the port and how it does business, but now the port will also be looking at managing clean air. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
You can enjoy the Carlsbad flower fields for longer this year. Thanks to cooler spring weather, the blooming season has been extended. There are about 14 acres currently in bloom. More good news for those who want to visit. Tickets will be discounted by half. The season will now end on May 16th. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.